3 nights ago, my wife Sylvia pushed my hand off her shoulder and told me not to touch her. I looked at her in the darkness and said one word, never. Then I added, not tonight, not ever, I'm done. She scoffed and told me I was being dramatic, rolled over, and went to sleep. I didn't sleep. I laid there until 3 in the morning, making final decisions, and by dawn, I was gone. When she woke up, the house was empty and I'd already vanished. A week later, she got served divorce papers at her office in front of everyone. I'm Garrett Holloway, 43 years old. I spent 22 years in Army intelligence before retiring to build my own security consulting company. The military taught me how to read people, identify patterns nobody else notices, document evidence meticulously, and construct cases that can't be torn apart. Those exact skills work just as effectively in a dying marriage as they do in the field. Sylvia and I have been married 21 years. She's a family law attorney, one of the most feared in Boston, specializing in high-stakes divorces where millions are on the line. The irony isn't lost on me. She built her entire career helping women dismantle marriages and walk away with everything, coaching them on strategy and tactics. She never imagined she'd wake up one morning to find her own husband had already executed his exit plan. That final night started like dozens before it. I came home around 6:30, started making dinner while she worked late in her home office like always. When she finally emerged around 9:45, I'd already eaten but kept her plate warm in the oven. She looked at it like I'd committed some offense. She told me flatly that she'd eaten at the office already, her voice completely devoid of warmth. I nodded and covered the food with foil without saying anything. She poured herself a glass of wine and scrolled through her phone, never once looking up at me. I watched her for a moment, this woman I'd loved since college, and saw absolutely nothing familiar looking back at me. Everything about Sylvia had changed over the past few years. Her hair was different, cut shorter and styled more aggressively. Her clothes were more expensive, designer labels I never saw her wear before. Even the way she carried herself seemed designed to create distance between us. We went to bed in our usual silence. That part wasn't unusual anymore. What was different was what happened when I reached for her, just a simple gesture, my hand resting on her shoulder. Sylvia pushed my hand away hard. There was real force behind it, frustration, and maybe disgust. She turned to face me in the darkness, and I could see her expression clearly in the moonlight coming through our bedroom window. Her voice was cold and measured when she said, "Don't touch me tonight, Garrett." Something shifted in my chest right then. Not heartbreak, I'd felt that already 1,000 times over the past 3 years. This was different. This was absolute clarity. I sat up slowly and looked at her for a long moment. Then I said quietly, "Not ever." She blinked, confused, and said, "What?" I repeated myself, "Not ever. I'm done." Sylvia scoffed and rolled back over, told me I was being dramatic and to go to sleep. But I didn't sleep at all. I laid there in the dark, listening to her breathing, even out, watching the ceiling fan spin slowly above us. And by 3 in the morning, I'd made every decision I needed to make. By 4, I was in the kitchen packing a single duffel bag with essentials. By 5:15, I was dressed and standing at the front door. I didn't leave a note or take anything that could be argued over later in court. Just my personal documents, my laptop, and the clothes I was wearing. My wedding ring went in the kitchen junk drawer, next to old receipts and papers. The same drawer where she kept insurance forms and other documents I'd gotten her to sign over the past year. Papers she'd barely glanced at because she trusted me to handle boring administrative details. That trust was about to become her biggest mistake. I walked out at dawn while Sylvia still slept, pulled out of the driveway in my car that was titled in my name alone, and drove to a motel 35 miles outside the city. I didn't feel sad or angry. I felt free for the first time in years, like I could finally breathe without someone's contempt pressing down on my chest. What Sylvia didn't know yet, couldn't possibly know, was that I'd been methodically preparing for this exact moment for 11 months. Every document she signed without reading, every asset I quietly protected, every conversation I documented. She taught me well over the years, letting me listen to her strategize, her clients' divorces over dinner, explaining tactics and approaches. She just never realized I was taking detailed notes and learning from her playbook. The motel coffee tasted like burnt rubber and regret, but I drank it anyway. Sitting on the edge of that sagging bed in a room that smelled like industrial cleaner and strangers' problems, I finally allowed myself to think clearly. Sylvia would be waking up soon. Maybe she already had. I imagined her reaching across the bed, expecting to find me there, finding empty space instead, assuming I'd gotten up early for a run or to make breakfast like I always did. It would take her a while to notice what was really happening. My clothes were gone from the closet. My laptop was missing from my office. The drawer where I kept important documents had been emptied. She'd eventually figure it out. My phone sat face down on the nightstand. I'd turned it back on an hour earlier but left it on silent. 23 missed calls already and 15 text messages. I didn't need to read them to know exactly what they said. "Where are you? This isn't funny. Call me now." Classic Sylvia, not worried about me as a person, just worried about the disruption to her carefully controlled routine. I opened my laptop and logged into the secure, encrypted portal I'd been building for months. Everything was there, organized into folders, documented and ready. But before reviewing my own preparations, I needed to check something that had been bothering me for weeks. 3 months ago, I'd noticed a discrepancy in our joint tax documents. Nothing major at first, just a line item that didn't match up with our shared accounts. Sylvia handled most of our personal finances, claimed it was easier since she dealt with legal paperwork all day anyway. I trusted her completely. That was my first critical mistake. I'd spent the last 12 weeks quietly digging, using skills the military had taught me about following paper trails and tracking money. What I found was a separate account at a completely different bank, an account Sylvia had opened 4 years ago in her name only, hidden from me entirely. An account she'd been steadily funding from her quarterly bonuses and partnership distributions. $138,000 hidden away, insurance money for a future I apparently wasn't part of. She'd been planning her exit strategy long before I started planning mine. I stared at the account statements I'd obtained through methods that weren't exactly legal, feeling something cold settle deep in my chest. Not anger exactly, just crystal clear clarity. She'd been methodically preparing to leave me for years while I cooked her dinners and waited up for her and believed every lie about late meetings and demanding clients. The irony was almost darkly funny. We'd both been preparing to abandon ship, both gathering supplies and plotting escape routes in secret. But I'd been more thorough and more strategic. My phone buzzed again. Sylvia calling for the 30th time. This time she'd left a voicemail. I debated listening, then figured I might as well know what story she was already telling herself. Her voice came through sharp and irritated, not concerned or worried. "Garrett, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it's not cute at all. You need to come home immediately. We have the Henderson meeting tomorrow, and I need you to review the security assessment for their estate. Call me back right now." Not "where are you? Are you okay? What's wrong? Is something happening?" Just logistics and business and the meeting she needed me for. I deleted the voicemail immediately and pulled up the file I'd labeled evidence on my laptop. Inside were 11 months of careful documentation, not just financial records, but something potentially more damaging, something I'd started creating after a conversation with Callan, my best friend, who'd pulled me aside 6 months ago and told me something that fundamentally changed everything I thought I knew. Sylvia had tried to seduce Callan at our company Christmas party 2 years ago. Callan hadn't told me at first, wanting to protect me, hoping it was just drunken stupidity she'd regret in the morning. But when he saw how cold things had gotten between us over time, how she treated me like furniture instead of a husband, how she spoke to me with open contempt, he couldn't stay quiet anymore. He felt I deserved to know who I was really married to. I'd started recording video journals after that revelation. Not illegally, not with hidden cameras spying on her, but simply documenting my own experiences in my own home. Me talking to a camera in my office about what happened each day. Her dismissals, her coldness, the nights she pushed me away physically, the moments she spoke to me with obvious contempt and disgust. 27 recordings in total, each one timestamped and saved securely, each one showing a man slowly realizing his marriage was already over and had been for years. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Ainsley, our daughter. "Dad, Mom says you left for a business trip without telling her. She seems really upset. Everything okay?" So that was the story Sylvia was already spinning. An unannounced business trip. Inconsiderate husband. Typical male behavior. I typed back carefully, protecting Ainsley from the worst of it. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just needed some space to think things through. How are your classes going?" Deflect, protect, shield. Let Sylvia manage her narrative for now. Ainsley didn't need to be dragged into the middle of this yet, but she would be eventually. They all would be. I closed the laptop and looked around the small motel room. This wasn't where I'd stay long term, just a temporary waypoint. Tomorrow I'd move to something more permanent, somewhere Sylvia couldn't easily find me. I had work to do, documents to file, lawyers to meet with, a comprehensive strategy to execute. Sylvia thought she was the absolute expert at divorce. She'd handled hundreds of cases over 15 years, dismantled dozens of marriages, taught countless women how to protect themselves financially and emotionally. But she'd never faced an opponent who'd spent 22 years in military intelligence operations. She was about to learn the difference between legal strategy and actual tactical warfare. The law firm of Blackwood and Associates occupied the 14th floor of a glass tower in downtown Boston. I'd chosen them extremely carefully after 3 months of thorough research before making the first call. Harrison Blackwood was known for two things in particular: absolute discretion and winning cases nobody thought could be won. He was waiting when I arrived at 8 in the morning, mid-50s, gray hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. We shook hands and he gestured to a leather chair across from his massive desk. "Mr. Holloway?" Blackwood said, opening a folder that contained documents I'd sent him. "I've reviewed all the preliminary materials you provided. Quite thorough documentation. 22 years in military intelligence teaches you to document absolutely everything," I replied. He smiled slightly and said, "Your wife is Sylvia Holloway, senior partner at Whitfield and Ross, family law specialist. You know her personally?" "Of her," Blackwood answered. "She's extremely formidable in court, very aggressive, very protective of her client's interests." He paused deliberately. "This won't be a simple dissolution by any means." "I'm not looking for simple," I told him. "I'm looking for complete protection." Blackwood pulled out the financial documents I'd provided, the hidden account in Sylvia's name, $138,000. He asked how I'd obtained these statements and whether it mattered legally. "It might," he said, "depending on how she responds in court. But let's set that aside for now. You've also documented systematic asset protection over the past 11 months. Property transfers, account separations, beneficiary changes. All signed by her, every single one. She never read them," I explained. "Just signed wherever I pointed." Blackwood asked if I had proof of that. I pulled out my phone and showed him a video. Sylvia at our kitchen counter, coffee in one hand, pen in the other, signing 3 separate documents while scrolling through her phone, never once looking down at the papers she was signing. "Is that your kitchen?" he asked. Yes, and I was standing right there with the camera visible. No hidden surveillance, no deception whatsoever. She just didn't care enough to pay attention to what she was signing. Blackwood leaned back in his chair, studying me carefully. "Mr. Holloway, I need to ask you directly. What's your end game here? Asset protection, full separation, revenge?" "Survival," I said simply. "Sylvia's been preparing to leave me for years. That account proves it conclusively. I just got started first. I want what's mine protected, my business secured, and I want to walk away with my dignity intact." "What about your daughter?" he asked. "Ainsley's 19, studying abroad in London. She's an adult. I won't use her as leverage, and I won't let Sylvia use her either." Blackwood made notes and asked about the attempted seduction of my friend Callan Patterson. I confirmed I had his signed and notarized statement, and that he's willing to testify if needed. "And these video journals," Blackwood continued, 27 recordings of you documenting the deterioration of your marriage. That's unusual. Is it admissible in court?" "Possibly," he said. "They're recordings of you in your own home discussing your own experiences. No secret surveillance of her. But a judge might view them as calculated." "They are calculated," I acknowledged. "Everything I've done has been calculated and strategic. Sylvia taught me that approach. She tells her clients constantly to document everything and to protect themselves, to plan ahead carefully. I learned from the best teacher available." Blackwood closed the folder and looked at me directly. "I'll be completely honest, Mr. Holloway. Your wife will come at this extremely hard. She knows the system intimately, knows the judges personally, knows exactly how to paint narratives that destroy men. We need to be fully prepared for her to claim emotional misuse, financial control, maybe even that you're mentally unstable. Let her try," I said. "I have documentation that says otherwise." "Good," Blackwood replied, "because the moment she realizes you're completely serious, she'll go absolutely nuclear." My phone buzzed on his desk. I glanced at it. Sylvia again, now up to 37 missed calls. That her? Blackwood asked. Yes, don't answer it, he instructed. Not yet. Let her anxiety build. Let her wonder what you're doing, who you're talking to, what you're planning. The longer she's in the dark, the more mistakes she'll make out of desperation. I nodded and turned the phone face down. Blackwood stood and extended his hand. I'll file the preliminary paperwork this afternoon. Separation of assets, temporary restraining orders on joint accounts, formal notification of intent to dissolve the marriage. She'll be served tomorrow at her office. Tomorrow, I asked. Fast execution prevents her from preparing a counter-strategy, he explained. By the time she realizes what's actually happening, we'll have already secured your position completely. I was back at the motel that evening, reviewing documents on my laptop when my phone rang. Ainsley. I'd been expecting this call but dreading it. Hey, sweetheart, I answered, keeping my voice steady and calm. Dad, what's really going on? Ainsley's voice was tight with worry. Mom called me 3 times today. She says you left, that you won't answer her calls, that she doesn't know where you are. I closed my eyes and chose my words carefully. Your mother and I are having some serious problems. I needed space to think clearly. Problems? Ainsley asked. Dad, you guys have been married forever. What kind of problems? Adult problems, I said. Nothing you need to worry about right now. Don't do that, she said, frustration creeping into her voice. Don't treat me like I'm 12 years old. I'm 19. If you and Mom are separating, I deserve to know why. She was absolutely right. Ainsley wasn't a child anymore, but she also didn't need to be dragged into the middle of the situation. Not yet. Your mother and I have been growing apart for a very long time, I explained carefully. She's been focused on her career, and I've been focused on mine. Somewhere along the way, we stopped being partners and started being roommates. Then we stopped being even that. So you just left without talking to her? Ainsley challenged. I tried talking for years, I replied. She stopped listening a long time ago. There was silence on the other end. Then quietly she said, Mom thinks you're having some kind of breakdown. She said you're not yourself. There it was. Sylvia's narrative already being deployed strategically. Paint me as unstable, as irrational, as someone who couldn't handle life and just snapped under pressure. Do I sound like I'm having a breakdown? I asked calmly. No, Ainsley admitted. You sound calm. Really calm, actually, which is almost scarier. I'm not breaking down, sweetheart, I told her. I'm breaking free. There's a fundamental difference. Mom said you took important documents, that you emptied drawers, that you're hiding something. I took my personal documents, I explained. My passport, my financial records, my business files. Things that belong to me. She makes it sound like you stole something. I'm sure she does, I said. Another pause. Then Ainsley asked the question I knew was coming. Dad, are you guys getting divorced? The question hung in the air between us. This was the moment I could deflect again, buy more time, let Ainsley stay in the dark a little longer. Or I could give her the truth she deserved. Probably, I said. Yes. I heard her breath catch. God, I didn't think it would actually happen. I mean, I knew things weren't great, but you guys seemed okay. Your mother and I are very good at pretending, I told her. We've been pretending for a long time. Does she know you want a divorce? Ainsley asked. She will soon, I replied. What does that mean? It means I'm handling things legally and properly. She'll be informed through the appropriate legal channels. You're serving her papers? Ainsley's voice rose. Dad, you can't just ambush her like that. Ainsley, your mother is a divorce attorney, I reminded her. She knows exactly how this works. She's done it to dozens of husbands. She won't be surprised by the process itself. But she'll be surprised at you doing it, Ainsley said. Good, I replied. She should be. Maybe she'll finally understand what it feels like to be dismissed and ignored. That's not fair, Ainsley protested. Fair? I felt anger rise for the first time. You want to talk about fair? Your mother has been emotionally checked out of our marriage for 3 years. She treats me like I'm an inconvenience, like I'm in her way. She stopped touching me, stopped talking to me about anything that actually matters, stopped seeing me as a person. But I'm supposed to be fair? The next morning, I was having coffee 3 blocks from Sylvia's office when Blackwood texted me. Done. 10:47 a.m. The process server had just handed Sylvia her divorce papers in front of her colleagues at the law firm. I imagined her face, the shock turning rapidly to rage, her carefully maintained control shattering publicly. My phone buzzed immediately. Sylvia's name. I let it ring through to voicemail. Then another call. Then another. 6 calls in 4 minutes. The texts started flooding in. You served me at work? At work? Everyone saw. My partner saw. How dare you humiliate me like this? Call me immediately. I sipped my coffee calmly and waited. The humiliation was completely intentional. Sylvia had always told her clients that serving papers at work created psychological pressure for quick settlements. I'd learned directly from the best. My phone rang again. Preston Thompson, her law partner and the one she'd been having suspiciously frequent dinners with. I answered. Daniel Holloway. Garrett, it's Preston Thompson. Sylvia just received some documents and she's quite upset. Perhaps we could discuss this rationally, work something out. There's nothing to discuss, Preston. Those documents are perfectly clear. Asset separation, restraining orders, intent to dissolve the marriage. Serving her at work was unnecessarily cruel, Preston said. Was it? I asked. She served dozens of men at their workplaces over the years. She told me explicitly it was strategic. I learned that approach directly from her. Silence on the line. Then Preston's voice hardened noticeably. Sylvia has substantial resources and connections throughout Boston's entire legal system. You're making a serious mistake threatening her. I let the word hang deliberately. Why would her law partner be threatening me personally? Unless there's something more going on between you two. I don't know what you're insinuating, Preston said defensively. Don't you? I replied calmly. I have documentation, Preston. Emails. 17 dinner receipts over 14 months. All expense to the firm's account. That's an awful lot of business dinners for 2 partners. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Ask Sylvia if I'm the type to bluff, I said. 22 years in military intelligence taught me to gather irrefutable evidence before making any claims. Then I hung up. My phone exploded with Sylvia's texts. You have no idea what you've done. I will absolutely destroy you in court. I'll make sure Ainsley knows what kind of man you really are. That last threat crossed a bright red line, using our daughter as a weapon. I typed one response, see you in court. Then I blocked her number completely. All communication would go through attorneys now. Every threat she made would be documented. Blackwood called that afternoon with news. She's filed for an emergency hearing tomorrow morning, claims you've locked her out of all accounts and left her financially destitute. That's completely false, I said. She has her personal accounts, her substantial salary, her partnership distributions. I know, Blackwood replied, but she's painting a specific picture for the judge. We need documentation of her account access by tonight. Already done, I told him. I'll send everything within the hour. The next morning, I arrived at the courthouse early. Blackwood met me outside with his briefcase. Stay completely calm, he instructed. Don't react to anything she says. Keep your eyes on the judge only. The courtroom was wood-paneled and formal. Sylvia sat with Preston, looking composed but tense. When our eyes met briefly, hers were full of fury and disbelief. Judge Patricia Mendez entered and we all stood. Be seated, she said. This is an emergency motion filed by Mrs. Sylvia Holloway. Mr. Thompson, you're representing Mrs. Holloway? Preston stood formally. Yes, Your Honor. My client was served without any warning and has discovered her husband systematically locked her out of all marital accounts, leaving her without funds for basic living expenses. Blackwood stood smoothly. Your Honor, that's completely inaccurate. Mrs. Holloway has full access to her personal account containing $42,000, her partnership account, and personal credit cards. Mr. Holloway froze only joint accounts pending proper division of marital assets. His client earns over $300,000 annually. She's hardly destitute by any measure. Judge Mendez looked at Sylvia directly. Mrs. Holloway, you have access to personal accounts? Sylvia stood. Your Honor, while I have some accounts available, my husband has taken control of marital assets accumulated over 21 years, assets I contributed substantially to building. Mr. Blackwood, the judge prompted. Your Honor, we have documentation that Mrs. Holloway hid $138,000 in a separate account she never disclosed to her husband. Clear preparation for separation. Our client simply secured his legitimate assets upon discovering this deception. Preston jumped in quickly. That account was maintained for household emergencies. Then why wasn't it reported on their joint tax returns? Blackwood asked pointedly. Judge Mendez held up her hand. We're not trying the full case today. Joint accounts remain frozen temporarily pending discovery. I'm ordering $5,000 monthly to Mrs. Holloway for living expenses. Both parties must submit complete financial disclosure within 30 days. Full hearing scheduled in 6 weeks. Outside the courthouse, Sylvia caught my arm forcefully. How could you do this to me? 21 years, Garrett. I looked at her hand, then her eyes. You had 3 years to treat me like I mattered. You chose not to. I never planned to leave you, she insisted. Then explain the $138,000 you've been hiding, I replied. Her hand dropped. That was just being smart and prepared. No, I said. That was you preparing to leave while letting me believe we had a future together. Preston appeared, placing his hand on her shoulder too familiarly. We need to go, he said quietly. I watched them leave together, his hand lingering on her back. That told me everything I needed to know. 2 weeks after the hearing, Callan Patterson sat across from me at a downtown bar, nursing a beer and looking distinctly uncomfortable. You really need me to do this? He asked. Put it all in writing formally? I need the truth documented, Callan, I explained. What Sylvia did at that Christmas party 2 years ago matters legally. It shows a pattern of behavior, proves she was already checked out of the marriage emotionally. He nodded slowly. All right, I'll do it. But you know she's going to come at me hard in court. She'll claim I'm lying, that I'm just backing you up because we're friends. Let her try, I said. You're willing to testify under oath, right? Yeah, I am, Callan confirmed. I should have told you sooner, when it actually happened. I thought it was just drunk stupidity at the time. But watching how she treated you after that, how cold she got, I realized it wasn't a one-time thing. It was who she'd become fundamentally. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder. Tell me exactly what happened. Every detail you remember clearly. Callan set down his beer and collected his thoughts carefully. It was December 15th, 2 years ago. Your company holiday party at that hotel downtown. You left around 9 because of that client emergency. Remember the security breach at the Morrison building? I remember, I confirmed. Sylvia stayed behind, said she wanted to network and catch up with people. I was at the bar around 11 when she found me. She was drunk, not falling down drunk, but definitely past her limit. Started talking about how you'd changed, how you used to be more fun and spontaneous. What exactly did she say? I asked. She said, Callan, do you remember when Garrett used to laugh? Really laugh? Now he just goes through the motions like a robot. Then she got close, put her hand on my chest and said, I miss being with someone who actually wants me physically. My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice steady. Then what happened? She kissed me, Callan said. Full on kissed me. I pushed her back immediately, told her she was drunk and needed to go home. She laughed it off, said I was being uptight just like you. Then she tried again, said we should get a hotel room, that you'd never find out. What did you do? I told her no firmly. I said she was married to my best friend, and this absolutely wasn't happening under any circumstances. She got angry then, said I was just like you, boring and predictable. She walked away and I left right after, and I thought about calling you that night, but I figured she was just drunk and would regret it in the morning. Did she ever mention it again? I asked. Ever, Callan replied. Next time I saw her at your barbecue that summer, she acted like absolutely nothing had happened. Super friendly, asked about my wife, played the perfect hostess. That's when I knew it wasn't just booze. She was calculating, testing boundaries. When I didn't bite, she just moved on like it never occurred. The next day, Callan sat in Blackwood's office and gave his formal sworn statement. Every word recorded, transcribed, notarized. Sylvia's attempt to seduce my best friend, documented and ready for court. Blackwood reviewed it and smiled with satisfaction. This is very good, he said. Really good. It establishes she was emotionally unfaithful, actively trying to cheat, and shows her contempt for the marriage 2 years ago. Combined with the hidden money, it paints an extremely clear picture. When do we use it? I asked. Not yet, Blackwood advised. Let Sylvia build her case first. Let her claim she's the sufferer, that you're controlling and cruel. Then, when she's fully committed to that narrative, we bring Callan in and show the judge who really destroyed this marriage. 3 weeks into the separation, Blackwood called with significant news. Sylvia's financial disclosure came through. You need to see this immediately. I met him at his office within the hour. He spread documents across his conference table, highlighting sections with yellow marker. Remember that hidden account? The 138,000? What about it? It's not the only one, Blackwood said. He tapped another document. There's a second account, a separate brokerage account in her name only, opened 6 years ago, another $83,000. I stared at the numbers in disbelief. She's been hiding money for 6 years? It gets better, Blackwood continued. Look at the deposit patterns. Regular monthly contributions, sometimes 2 or 3,000 at a time, all from her quarterly bonuses and partnership distributions. Money that should have been reported as marital income. How much total? I asked. Combined between both accounts, $221,000 hidden across accounts you never knew existed. I sat down heavily. She's been planning this for 6 years, planning to leave me while I thought we were building a future together. It's worse than that, Blackwood said. Look at the timing of deposits carefully. They increased significantly starting 3 years ago, right around when you said things got really cold between you. He was absolutely right. The deposits jumped from $1,500 monthly to sometimes $5,000. Sylvia had been aggressively funding her escape plan while treating me like an inconvenience at home. Can we use this in court? I asked. Absolutely, Blackwood replied. This isn't just hiding assets. This is systematic deception over multiple years. It shows clear intent, planning, and complete disregard for marital partnership. Any judge will see this as her preparing for divorce while keeping you completely in the dark. I was having coffee near my new apartment when an unknown number called. A woman's voice, hesitant but determined. Is this Garrett Holloway? Yes, who's calling? My name is Vanessa Sterling. I was a client of your wife's 4 years ago. I saw the news about your separation. I need to tell you something about Sylvia. We met the next day at a diner in Cambridge, away from downtown, where Sylvia had extensive connections. Vanessa was late 30s, well-dressed, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who'd rebuilt after complete disaster. Thank you for meeting me, she said, ordering coffee with steady hands. This isn't easy to talk about. What do you want to tell me about Sylvia? I asked directly. Vanessa pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. 4 years ago, she represented me in my divorce. My husband and I had problems, sure, but nothing that couldn't be fixed with work. Sylvia convinced me otherwise. That's her job, to protect her clients, I said. No, Vanessa's voice hardened. She didn't protect me. She weaponized me. She taught me how to destroy my husband systematically, how to hide money illegally, how to turn our kids against him, how to claim misuse that never actually happened. She gave me literal scripts for what to say in court, coached me on how to cry on command for the judge. I opened the folder carefully. Emails from Sylvia's professional address, laying out strategies that crossed every ethical line imaginable. How to falsify misuse claims convincingly, how to hide assets illegally, how to manipulate custody evaluators. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because I destroyed a good man's life following her advice, Vanessa said, her voice breaking slightly. My ex-husband lost his business, his reputation, his relationship with our children. 4 years later, I'm drowning in guilt, and my kids barely speak to me because they figured out I lied about everything. Sylvia turned me into a monster. Does your ex-husband know you're here? I asked. He does, Vanessa replied. He said if these emails help protect you from what she did to him, then at least some good comes from our nightmare. Can I keep these? They're yours, she said. I have copies securely stored. Your wife is extremely good at playing sufferer, Mr. Holloway. She'll cry in court, make you look like a monster. But she's the one who's been making monsters out of her clients for years. Don't let her win. I sent everything to Blackwood immediately. He called back within 30 minutes. Garrett, this is absolutely explosive. If these emails are authentic, Sylvia could face serious ethics violations, possibly disbarment. They're authentic, I confirmed. I verified the email headers personally. The dates match Vanessa's case timeline perfectly. We need to be strategic, Blackwood advised. If we introduce this too early, Sylvia will claim they're fabricated. We wait until she's fully committed to her sufferer narrative. Then we bring Vanessa as a witness and destroy her credibility completely. 2 days later, Ainsley called. Her voice was different, harder. Dad, I asked Mom about that Christmas party, about Uncle Callan. What did she say? I asked carefully. She said Callan's lying, that he's making it up to help you. But Dad, she wouldn't look at me when she said it. She kept changing the subject, getting angry that I'd even ask. That's not how innocent people act. I'm sorry you had to confront her about that, I said. I also asked about the hidden money, the 2 accounts, Ainsley continued. She said it was just smart financial planning, that married people should have separate emergency funds. But she never told you about them, never disclosed them. The final hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday morning in late October, 8 months after I'd walked out. 8 months of legal battles, discovery fights, and Sylvia's increasingly desperate attempts to control the narrative. Blackwood met me outside the courthouse, carrying 2 briefcases. She wants to settle, he told me. Preston called this morning. They're willing to negotiate before we go in front of Judge Mendez. What are they offering? I asked. She keeps the house, you keep the lake cabin. Assets split 50-50. She drops all claims of financial misuse if you drop Callan's testimony and Vanessa's emails. No, I said firmly. Blackwood smiled. I told him you'd say that. So here's our counter. You keep the cabin, your business, your retirement accounts, and the vehicle. She keeps her hidden accounts, all $221,000. Her partnership in the firm and her professional reputation remain intact, but she signs a statement admitting the accounts were hidden and doesn't contest anything publicly. She'll never agree to that, I said. Let's find out, Blackwood replied. We entered the courthouse. Sylvia was already there with Preston, looking tired and somehow smaller. 8 months of fighting had worn her down, stripped away the polished facade. When she saw me, something flickered in her eyes. Not anger anymore. Something closer to resignation. Judge Mendez called us into her chambers for preliminary discussion. I understand there's a settlement proposal on the table. Blackwood laid out our terms clearly. Sylvia listened, her face carefully neutral. When he finished, she looked at Preston, who nodded slightly. We'll agree, Sylvia said quietly, with one condition. The videos, all 27 of them, stay sealed. They don't become public record. I considered that carefully. The videos were my truth, my documentation of the marriage's collapse. But they were also deeply personal, raw moments of pain and realization. Agreed, I said. But you sign a statement acknowledging the hidden accounts and admitting you never disclosed them during the marriage. Sylvia's jaw tightened visibly. That damages my professional reputation. You damaged it yourself when you hid the money, I replied calmly. Judge Mendez intervened. Mrs. Holloway, Mr. Holloway is being extremely generous given the evidence. If this goes to trial, the outcome could be far worse for you. The hidden accounts, the attempted infidelity, Ms. Sterling's testimony about coaching clients to commit perjury. That's disbarment territory. Sylvia's face went pale. Vanessa Sterling contacted him with extensive documentation, Blackwood said calmly. Emails showing you advised her to falsify misuse claims, hide assets illegally, manipulate custody proceedings. You want that in open court where it becomes permanent public record? Silence stretched uncomfortably. Sylvia looked at Preston, who gave her a small nod. Then she looked at me, really looked at me. Maybe for the first time in years. Fine, she said quietly. I'll sign. The paperwork took 3 hours. Lawyers drafting agreements, terms being negotiated, signatures being witnessed. By mid-afternoon, it was done. 21 years of marriage dissolved into legal documents and property divisions. Outside the courthouse, Sylvia stopped me. Garrett, please. Don't, I said firmly. We're done. There's nothing left to say between us. I never meant for it to end like this, she said. You didn't mean to lose, I replied. That's different. She flinched visibly. I wasn't always like this. I used to love you. Maybe, I acknowledged. But you stopped a long time ago, and you didn't have the courage to tell me. You just waited for me to figure it out, while you secretly prepared your exit strategy. You pushed me away, she said, voice rising. You were always working, always focused on your business. I felt alone. I was working to build a life for us, I said. And while I did that, you were secretly funding your escape and coaching other women to destroy their marriages. So don't blame me for your choices, Sylvia. You made them. You hid the money. You tried to cheat. You coached clients to destroy their husbands. That's on you, not me. 4 months later, I stood in a bookstore in Cambridge, looking at a display of new releases. My book, The Silent Exit, When Walking Away Saves Your Life, sat prominently on the featured shelf. A memoir about recognizing emotional misuse, strategic departure, and reclaiming dignity after years of being dismissed. My phone buzzed. Ainsley sending a photo of herself, holding my book in a London bookstore. Proud of you, Dad. Proud you told your truth. The book had been therapeutic to write, laying out the entire story without using real names, just experiences. How to recognize when a marriage is over. How to protect yourself legally and financially. How to document everything methodically. How to leave with dignity intact. Early reviews were overwhelmingly positive. Men reached out constantly, thanking me, saying they'd felt the same coldness and dismissal, but thought they were going crazy. Sylvia had tried to stop publication, claimed it violated our settlement agreement. Blackwood shut that down immediately. The book didn't mention her name anywhere, didn't identify her specifically. It was my story, my truth, and I had every right to tell it. I heard through mutual friends that she'd left Boston, taken a position at a firm in Seattle, starting over where people didn't know her history. Ainsley visited her occasionally, maintained a relationship, but it remained strained. I rebuilt completely. New house, new routines, genuine peace for the first time in years. I dated occasionally, nothing serious, just rediscovering what it felt like to be wanted and seen as an actual person. Callan stopped by regularly with beer and pizza. "Your book's selling really well," he said one evening. Sylvia reached out to my wife, asked her to convince me to stop telling people what happened at that party. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "That the truth isn't negotiable," Callan replied. "She made her choices. She lives with them." We clinked bottles and I looked around my living room. My space, my life, my future finally belonged to me again. Sylvia had taught me a lot over 21 years, how to be patient and loyal and hopeful about people. But walking away from her taught me something infinitely more valuable. How to recognize when loyalty becomes self-destruction. How to protect yourself when the person who promised to protect you stops caring if you exist. How to leave with dignity when staying meant losing yourself completely. I didn't regret the marriage entirely. We had genuinely good years before she became who she is now, but I also didn't regret ending it. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't fighting to save something that's already broken. It's having the courage to walk away and build something better. I walked out at dawn while she slept, and I've never once looked back. Best decision I ever made.